Hi, this is Raj from Tigerstyle. Welcome back to our studio in Glasgow. So this track is a track called Husam the Gully. It features a vocalist called Harbhajan Man. And for us, it was kind of a big deal for us to be working with him. This guy, he's a traditional kind of folk singer. He's been around for a long time, and he actually kind of rejuvenated Punjabi regional cinema. So he's a pretty big dude to be working with. And I mean, as I was saying with the other song as well, our whole kind of style is a fusion of Punjabi kind of folk traditional music with Western kind of electronic influences, and also like things like hip hop and R&B or whatever. This track in particular, the vocal melody is a traditional form called akali. And it's a very specific way that this style is sung, and the lyrics are written a specific way as well to fit the kind of compositional kind of restraints that this style has. And this melody and this style has been around for a long time, and there's an associated kind of riff that's played on a traditional instrument called a tumbi that is really recognised. So we have that in this song. I'll just play that to you actually so you know what I'm talking about. So this riff here. So, I mean, that riff, if you play that to anyone, you know, Punjabi, they'll know what song it's from. It's actually from an older version of this style of singing. Yeah, so that kind of sound, most people will have heard it on Beware the Boys, Mundiya to Bachke by Punjabi MC. Again, that's played on a single stringed instrument that's held in the hands and plucked. And you know, it's playing a different thing to that song. That instrument is used on a lot of old folk recordings, and it's pretty much synonymous with with old Punjabi folk sound. So for us to we really wanted to incorporate that sound and this riff in particular with this song, and we really wanted to, because this singer is such a big name, and because he comes from a pretty strong kind of folk tradition, we wanted to have the folk element of the production pretty strong with this track. So I'll go through the kind of folk elements first, and then we can take a look at the kind of Western or dubsteppy stuff that we've put in there, because we wanted to give it a really kind of edgy sound as well. So, I mean, as well as having that tumbi sound in there, we've kind of layered it with a few different sounds. So we have the main sample. And then I've used just the pitch manipulation that's in Cubase, and just added a lower octave to that. So again, that's just duplicated the track and added the kind of pitch change to that. And then we have a little flute that's playing a similar riff. And then we've also got a layer on there of an instrument called a sarangi, which is it's a bowed instrument, and it's kind of held vertically and kind of bowed. It's got like 3 gut strings, and behind it it's got like 100 thin metal strings that all obviously resonate at different pitches to add a kind of natural reverb to it. So we've got a layer of that instrument on here as well, playing the same riff. And again, what we've done is duplicated the track, and instead of pitching down this time, we've pitched it up an octave just to add a little bit of brightness to it. Because I mean, you could EQ it and add some higher frequencies, but obviously if you pitch it up an octave, it adds that kind of, you know, high harmonic edge to it. So we've got that layered on there. And then when we kind of put it all together with these other melodic folk instruments on that riff, it all comes together quite nicely. I went to a studio in a small town called Fagwara, and I recorded a big session for a whole bunch of different songs that we were working on. So the sarangi was recorded, actually majority of the stuff was all recorded with an AKG 414. It was all recorded on I think it was a Presonus digital kind of desk. And what the sarangi player did was he recorded one layer and then double tracked it. The chap that was recording the tumbi as well, he recorded using the same mic, but again he played and then he double tracked, and then he, for some riffs that he played a lower octave on a larger version of the same instrument, a larger version of the tumbi, which is called a tumba. So he played a lower octave on that just to give it a bit more depth and a bit more width. So yeah, that's how those were recorded. The flute, again, when he recorded the flute, same mic, mostly just because of availability of resources. When you record in Mumbai in the bigger studios, you pretty much have endless resources. I mean, we've done recordings out in Mumbai for like some of the Bollywood projects that we've worked on, and you know, those guys had like a nice SSL to work with, and you know, an endless array of mics. But obviously, when you're in Punjab and you're using a smaller studio, just for a small session recording, you're pretty much limited to whatever the chap's got. So everything was recorded on a 414, pretty decent mic anyway, and it was a nice quiet kind of space, so we got pretty clean recordings. The chap playing the flute, he did one kind of his normal kind of playing octave, double tracked that, and then he played a lower octave, and we just, when I've mixed it, I've just kind of mixed the low octave in the middle and had the double tracks panned left and right. So it adds a bit of width and a little bit of depth to it as well, having a lower octave there. Yeah, so once we've got the kind of traditional melodic elements out of the way, the next thing for us to do is to get the percussion, traditional Punjabi Bhangra percussion. So most people that have heard this kind of style before or heard Bhangra before will have heard of the dhol drum. So dhol drum is a big kind of, I don't know how you would describe it. It's a big tubular drum. It's pretty massive. You need to stand up to play it, and you play it with sticks. It's got a kind of leather natural skin on the bass end, and then on the top end. Sometimes you'll get a natural skin, or you'll get like a plastic resin skin on it. It's a pretty awesome instrument. It's not the quietest of instruments, so it can be a challenge to record. But yeah, it sounds like this. So when we record that, the best way I've seen it recorded is having two drummers in the same room at the same time that play in sync with each other. That particular recording was done in Mumbai, and the chap that played the dole for that recording was a guy called Ramju, who is pretty highly regarded in terms of dole playing. So it's him and his nephew that play, and the two of them sat facing each other, and then there was like 4 close mics, one on either end of the drum, and then there was 4 kind of overhead mics, and just the sound you get off it is really nice, big kind of wide sound. So that's the way we would ideally record it, with with 2 drummers. When you only have the one, you would probably set up a pair of close mics and a pair of overheads. And yeah, it can be quite ringy, especially the treble end of it can be quite ringy. So some guys kind of use like a tiny bit of gaffer tape, just strategically placed on the skin somewhere, just to deaden it a little bit, just so that you're not having to use kind of filters or notched EQs to take the rings away afterwards. It's always better to get the recording nice and clean in the first place. With this particular track, I'm pretty sure this was a pretty clean recording to begin with, because I mean, looking at the channel itself, I've not really got much processing on there. I think I've pretty much got no processing on there, so yeah, it's pretty clean recording. The other thing with Indian percussion is that it's all tuned percussion. So all of this percussion will have been recorded either on the root note of the project or on the 7th note, so that it's playing on a chord. So we've got the dole drums on there. We've got tabla on there as well, which is probably another instrument that people are familiar with. So it's the 2 drums that are played like this with the fingers, and then we've got a couple of layers of dolak drum on there, which is the smaller kind of tubular drum that's played with the hands. When they come together, they sound like this. It's kind of a nice groove. I've then got a layer of mandolin, just playing a single note pluck on there. And then we have this cool little hand drum. Traditionally it's called a turd. We have that on there. It's just a sample that's just been chopped. So when you put that all together, that pretty much gives you your kind of Punjabi percussion ensemble that you'd need for any kind of Punjabi track. And then obviously when you play it with the melodic elements on there, it sounds pretty nice. And there you can hear that we've added some stuttering effects just to give it a bit of edginess, and give us a way to kind of mark transitions. So kind of similar to the way that we did on Gori as well. Over later on in the track, we've got a mandolin riff that plays as well. into like a sarangi riff as well. So I mean, in terms of folk Punjabi melodic instruments, we've got sarangi on there, we've got tumbi and tumba on there, there's a flute playing, and there's mandolin playing on there as well. That pretty much covers the folky side of things. And then, I mean, obviously that was us getting the kind of main Punjabi drop section. Over the top of that, we've then programmed drums to kind of sit on top of it. And if we look at the elements that make up the kind of Western production that's gone on that drop section, I'll just loop it. So there's drum programming on there. It's pretty straightforward. Just a big dubstep snare, nice solid kick. The claps are just there to kind of back up the Indian percussion. And for that kind of droppy section, the drum breaks less dubsteppy and more just kind of keeping a solid rhythm behind it. In the other sections that lead up to that drop section, the beat's a little bit more varied. It's got a bit more going on in terms of hi-hats and stuff like that. So, I mean, that little kind of fill that you've heard there. Usually, when people bring in Indian percussion on a track, they'll bring it in with a big kind of percussion fill. But rather than doing that, what we thought we'd do with this track is kind of keep the percussion thing as a surprise element that just kind of pops out of nowhere. So, when it comes to that fill, we kind of mapped out that fill to play a similar kind of break to what a percussion fill or a traditional Indian percussion fill would have played, but we've just played it on the Western kind of drum kit that we've got on there. So, you know, listening to the track, you wouldn't expect that after that break there's going to be a big kind of Indian percussion drop that comes in, but I think that kind of just adds to the surprise of it all, and helps build tension for that part. Yeah, so now that we've looked at some of the drums, let's look at some of the other kind of melodic elements that are on there. So we have, there's a kind of ambient guitar sample that plays through the whole track. So it's basically a plucked kind of guitar sample, and I've run that through Guitar Rig, and I've got my own little preset that I've made on there that's just got a couple of LFOs that I'm manipulating a filter, cutoff, and resonance. And it all runs through a stereo delay on there as well. And that gives you a nice kind of ambient feel. And there's a second layer to that guitar as well. It's just got a little lick that plays on top of that. So I've just kind of layered a few different instruments on top of that to create a kind of backing bed for the track. So there's like a pulsing guitar that plays in there as well. Just on its own. And there's an electric piano that plays on top of that as well. And then there's another layer on there that is just kind of pulsing synth. I think on here it's just in there as an audio channel, but that's originally been played through an arpeggio on, I think it's Spire, Reveal Sound Spire, which is another really cool synth. So I've played this little arpeggio on there. That all comes together quite nicely. And then just to kind of add a little bit of rhythm to the melodic side of things there, I've got a reggae kind of guitar skank thing playing in there. And that's just backed up with an organ. Again, the organ sound in this project, you're seeing it as an audio thing, but that's been played on vintage organs, which is a Contact library. The reggae guitar sample was played using Virtual Guitarist, which is a nice wee Steinberg pack. It's quite dated, but it's been around for a while. But it's something that I turn to quite a lot, especially when I'm trying to get the kind of chord progression for a track, rather than sitting there with a piano sound. I prefer, I don't know why, just my brain likes the sound of a guitar playing a chord progression, so I tend to use that quite a lot. And just being able to go in and edit the way that each kind of preset on there, how it plays its riff, and manipulate the way it plays is quite handy. And I think what I've done is I've passed that through a guitar rig patch again, just to add a bit of reverb and character to it. The organ is pretty dry, but for this particular song, I've got two different projects. I've got one project where I've done majority of the kind of production side of things, and then I've got another project which was the mix down stage of things. In this project in particular, I've used the kind of render in place feature quite a bit, just because sometimes when you have these projects that have a lot of channels on them, depending on how powerful your computer system is, obviously, you will start to get little stability issues. So to get around them, the render in place thing is a huge help, because it just means that you can get it down there in audio and unload the instrument itself, so that you've freed up a little bit of space. As well as having the kind of reggae guitar skank thing and then the organ playing on top, I've also added a little harmonium channel on there. For this one, I've used a Contact library. It's by Crypto Cypher. They've got a Bollywood harmoniums bank that's pretty cool. So I've used that just to add some harmonium chords over the top of these, just to kind of add another layer on there. When you kind of bring that together with the other ambient kind of elements. And then after this kind of entry part, we've got some kind of orchestral programming. So I've used contrabass, cello, viola, violin, just to add a few more layers over the top. So you've got like a nice low end coming off that contrabass. And the string section's adding a bit of tension before we kind of go into the drum break and then into the Indian drop section. That pretty much makes up the kind of majority of the Western melodic elements. The rest of it all comes down to arrangement and how that all blends with the Indian elements that are there. Down here we've got like reverse crashes, crash cymbals, kind of rising sweep uplifter sounds that all have their part to play in kind of adding tension to things. And so that's pretty much the main gist of this track, to be honest. For us, it's usually getting the main Indian elements, the main Western elements together, and then working out an arrangement and adding the little kind of embellishments and transitional sounds to bring it all together. The bass line, really, during the vocal parts of the song, the bass is really just coming off the contrabass. This more just playing like a low octave drone through it. But then in the drop section, I've got like let me just see where it is. It should be on here. I've got like these little sub drops that you can hear there. And they just sit on top of the kick drum, really, because I felt rather than play an actual line, I just have more of a kind of almost like an 808 sitting on top of the kick drum, just to give it that punch. But I think when we had so much going on in terms of Indian percussion, because there's so many layers, adding a more kind of melodic bass line might have taken away from the rhythmic or the grooviness of that part, and through the vocal part, just having that contrabass in the background, just giving it that kind of low level drone was more what we were looking for this track in particular. When I was talking about the kind of vocal processing, what we've done is that we've got a main vocal channel here. And there's a fair bit of processing that's going on that main vocal part. There's I've used HEQ, another really good kind of waves plugin, just to smooth out the vocal a little bit, add a little bit more kind of high mids, take away some of the really harsh kind of top end. Then I've used a de-esser on there as well. H-comp as well, another really nice compressor that's got its own really sort of meaty character to it. I tend to find that if something's a little bit too harsh, if you put H-comp on there, it adds a kind of meatiness to it. So So I've used that, and then I've used another compressor just to bring in some of the really peaky parts of it. Other than that, there's little vocal chops that I've sent to a filtered delay. So when the vocal plays, there's these little bits that get sent to a filtered delay. I mean, I could have done that with automation, but sometimes rather than do it with an automation track, I like to have just little things sitting there so I can visually just see what's doing what. Obviously you can see what's doing what when you've got your automation curves, but I just like to work this way. Then I've got this other effect that it's quite cool. It's kind of like a reverse vocal ghost effect type thing. The way that I create that is I use reflector in guitar rig with a reverse reverb, and what I'll do is I'll chop like a very small bit of vocal from maybe the first syllable of the vocal, and then I'll just place that a little bit early, and you'll hear that it creates this kind of rising kind of ghost sound to the vocal. There's also some vocal stutters that go on further on. So just as the vocal comes out and we go into the drum kind of break before the main drop, there is this kind of chopped vocal part. Just play that. So again, for that I've used stutter edit, which is another really kind of useful plugin. I mean, there's kind of stuttering effects that you do in stutter edit. You can probably use loop mash effects to do similar things. There's probably a whole bunch of different plugins out there that can do similar things. And I think on some of our more recent projects that I have actually just used loop mash, but I found that stutter edit's quite cool with the way it kind of lays things out and has all these different kind of modules built into it, so you can build up your own little chain that has quite a lot going on in the one kind of effect. So yeah, I think that pretty much makes up this track. A nice solid Indian percussion section, some really kind of hooky and easily recognised melodic folk riffs, and then just a nice kind of moody ambient sort of Western production with some dubsteppy drum programming and drum sounds on there that just all kind of ties it all together quite nicely. And I think when you see the visual element of it, when you see the video to it as well, the video has this really big kind of epic look to it, and I think the kind of big epic sound that we managed to create with this song really worked well with the visual aspect of it all as well. See, the thing is, when you work with Punjabi music, sometimes when you're producing, you find that the way certain things have been sung don't fit into the normal like 4s and 8s. You know, that you're used to working with 4-bar loops or 8-bar loops or 16s or whatever, and that they put gaps in really awkward kind of places. So sometimes we have to kind of move vocals about, or sometimes we have to find a way to put in a gap somewhere, or extend the 4 bars that we're using by sometimes as little as 2 beats, just to be able to incorporate a gap that would traditionally kind of fit somewhere. So it's just kind of finding ways to work around the different way Punjabi music is structured. I mean, most of the stuff that we've worked with has all been 4/4 stuff. We have done some stuff that has been like 6/8, but I mean, you know, Punjabi music, some of it is can be in 14 beat cycles or like 7 beat cycles. There's a really traditional form that's like 9 beat cycles. So like there are these kind of weird beat patterns that some music that we've worked on has been in, but because myself and my brother, our first step into music was learning tabla, and when you learn tabla, you learn all these different beat patterns. So we have that already ingrained in us. So we kind of know how to work with these things, and we can find ways to program Western beats that fit those different styles. I think learning tabla has really helped us as well, because when you learn tabla, you're learning how each different hit on the tabla has a word or a name for it. And when you learn the pattern, you learn how to place it within what's called a matra. So if you have an 8 beat cycle, you've got 8 matras within that beat cycle, and however many hits you've got within each of those beats, you learn how to fit them in and how to create variations. And when you're working with Cubase, you're working with the piano roll, or you're working with the drum editor, and you're using, you know, 16ths, and you can visually see where different beats are supposed to fit to create different patterns. So a lot of the time, rather than playing them on a keyboard or even on like a drum pad, because I've had that kind of way of learning from the very beginning, I can visually imagine what a beat pattern is supposed to look like before I've even approached a keyboard. So a lot of the time it'll just be you know, draw it in. That's been a huge help. Yeah, it is 12 tone, but you'll get different rags. I mean, everything's done in rags, which are essentially scales, but sometimes they have these little nuances. So the combination of the combination of notes that's used when going up the scale is different from when you're coming down the scale. So getting the chord structures sometimes can be a little bit tricky, but I mean, you get used to it. I mean, we've been working in this scene for like 15 years or something, so we've kind of seen a few different ways of working, and we've tried to, you know, always come up with solutions to any little problems that we've come across. And yeah, we've yet to come across something that we can't work with, so it's been good. That's all we've got time for right now, but you can check us out online. If you go to YouTube and search for Tigerstyle, you'll pretty much find all our videos. If you check out Facebook, again, if you search for Tigerstyle, you'll find us on there. Myself and Pops are both on Twitter. You can search for Raj Tigerstyle or Pops Tigerstyle on Instagram as well. I'm also on Snapchat, so you can find me Raj_Tigerstyle on there as well. So yeah, pretty much everywhere on social networks you can find us.